Hello everyone, I can't believe it's December, but we're getting ready to finish up the year with our December Kimberbell, which is this cute little candle mat. So I guess it could also be a little mug rug, all kinds of fun things that you can do with it. But anyways, when you get your kit, in your kit you're going to get a piece of brown vinyl. You are going to get your background fabric, which is the cute little polka dot, and you're going to get 2 pieces of 9x11 green, which will be your back part. You're going to get 1 piece of your no-show mesh and a piece of batting. I don't want to rip this kit completely apart, but what you're going to be instructed to do is you're going to take your background fabric. Now remember, yours is white with the red polka dots. I just have white with some little brown polka dots. And you are going to interface it with 2 pieces of SF101. So you got 1 long strip in your kit, you're going to cut it in half, and you want to iron 1 piece to the back and then another piece to the back. And the reason why we're doing this is we're going to put the white over top of the green. So if we didn't put white or the interfacing on it, when you laid your white on top of it, it would make your white look kind of muddy. So basically what we're doing is keeping the background fabric from shadowing through. So you'll take your SF101, apply 1 piece and then the other, and this makes this really stable, so it's going to give your candle mat some substance as well. The next thing that you're going to do is your 2 pieces of 9x11 green background fabric. You're going to iron those in half. I don't know if you want to call it lengthwise or widthwise, but when you fold it in half, you're going to end up with 2 pieces that are about 9 by 4.5. And these 2 will be your backing piece. Your last piece of green will be the backing or the outside border of the scallops. So the first thing you're going to do is pull up your design, and it calls for a minimum of an 8x8 hoop. So many of the machines don't come with an 8x8, but you have to have 8 by something or larger than 8 by something. So I'm working on a baby lock machine, and I am using a 9.5 by 14 hoop just because it was convenient. And the first thing that you're going to do is stitch out your placement line. So I've got it on my batting. I did it in green. You can use any color you want. It's not going to show. But the first thing you're going to do is stitch your placement line, and that's where you're going to place your batting. So you got a piece of 8x8 batting, which you'll put over this, making sure that you cover the entire thing. So step number 2 is to tack the batting down. So I'm going to go ahead and let the machine do that. Okay, so the machine has stitched the tack down line of the batting. Now the instructions do not tell you to trim the batting, but I like to trim the batting, so you can see I've trimmed very close to the edge. It takes away the bulk. So what happens is when we add the other layers and we go to turn it inside out, what happens is the part of batting that's in here, it really adds too much bulk. So I went ahead and trimmed away the batting so that I lessened that. So now what I'm going to do is take my background fabric, and it's called the background behind the scallops, so it's going to be the green piece. So if we look at my sample, we're actually applying this piece right here, the green. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my green fabric on top, and I'm going to stitch it down, and I would suggest using a thread that matches this or a dark green. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that out now. Okay. So once I've done my tack down line, and you just want to make sure you have a good 1/4 inch all the way around it, the next thing it's going to do is a little bit of a trim. So on my sample, it's this white trim that goes around the outside. I'm doing it in white. You can do it in whatever color you choose. And up to this point, I've also been using just a pre-wound bobbin. There is so much thickness to this that you shouldn't have to worry about changing your bobbin. But I'm going to go ahead and do this decorative outline in the outer border in white. Okay, so I went ahead and stitched just this outer kind of a scalloped edge, actually kind of straight lines that look like little chimney tops. And then the next thing it had me do was stitch my placement line for my white fabric. And I went ahead and did that in white because I'm going to add my white fabric next on top of here. The reason why I went ahead and did that is when you put this piece down, you're tempted to stitch this down using white thread because it's a tack down, but I'm going to suggest that you use red only because the next thing or the next stitch that we're going to do is a red cover up. And so I actually used white when I did my sample, and the white thread kind of shows through. So I would recommend that when you go ahead and put this piece down, that you use red thread and then carry through the red. So I'm going to go ahead now. I did my placement line. This was the placement line. I'm going to place my fabric, and now I'm going to tack it down using red thread. Okay, so now we have our tack down line, and again I did it in red because I'm going to use a red finishing stitch. Now, everyone wants to trim right now, and they put a note in there, do not trim yet. What's going to happen is we're going to stipple in here and we're going to add our gingerbread men. We're going to be adding a lot of stitches on top of this, and as that happens, it pulls this fabric in. So if you trim it right now and it starts pulling in, this can actually the thread can actually slip out of there. So we're gonna wait to trim. I know you wanna trim it, but just don't do it yet. So the next thing we're gonna do is stippling in the background, and I'm gonna go ahead and use my off-white so that my stippling blends in. So let's stipple. Okay, so once you have finished stippling, now we can trim. So it has flattened this out, it's pulled as much as it's going to pull. So we're going to go ahead and trim this away because the next step is to do our tack down, our finishing stitch. Now most of the time we think of a finishing stitch as a zigzag stitch, but this time it's going to be just a decorative stitch. So you want to make sure you get really, really close to the edge. And it's kind of difficult because remember, we've added 2 layers of SF101 to this. So I'm switching back to my red thread, and I'm going to go ahead and do the finishing stitch for the scalloped part. Okay, so here is the red finishing stitch, and you can see there's a few wisps of the white fabric, and I'm okay with that. So I went ahead and did that finishing stitch, and then you're instructed to do the placement line for the gingerbread. So I went ahead and did my placement line. Now, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to place our vinyl on here. So remember, your vinyl has this plastic protective covering. So you need to pull the plastic off the top. You don't want to stitch through this. It's really hard on your needle, and then you're not going to like it on there, and it's hard to get off if you stitch it in place. So we're going to take this off and throw it away. Now, when I put this on my hoop and cover all of the gingerbread men, when I did my sample, I went ahead and stitched it in the brown so that it wouldn't show. And they're supposed to look like little gingerbread men. This is a raw edge finish. In other words, we're not going to do anything else except for tack it down with a bean stitch. And I used brown, and when you use brown on vinyl, when your thread matches your vinyl, it's really hard to trim it. So here's what the brown looks like. I'm going to go ahead and stitch this sample using a white outline. And I'm okay with that because I think it looks just like an icing thread going across it. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch, but this time I'm going to use white, and I'm going to trim it, and you can compare the differences, decide which color you want to use. Okay, so I've tacked down my little gingerbread men, and I did use white, and I don't think the white looks bad, and it was certainly a whole lot easier to trim. So the next thing that we're going to stitch out is the eyes and the mouth, and I used red on my sample, and I didn't think red was a good choice because it didn't show up on the brown. I can see the pink little hearts for his cheeks a lot better. So this time I'm going to do my eyes, mouth, and hearts all in pink. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch the eyes and the mouth right now. Okay, so the first thing that I did was stitched out the eyes and the mouth, and the pink doesn't show great. One thing you can do is back up your machine and do it a second time. What I would do is just lay your thread over top of the gingerbread men, and I'm thinking the yellows, the whites are probably your best choice. I went ahead and left them in pink so you could see them. Then it stitches out the white frosting, so the cuffs and the armbands on all of them. And then finally it goes back and stitches out the little heart cheeks. Now you will have jump stitches that you have to cut. Go ahead and take your little snips and cut those. But once you're finished, the very last step is to add the backing. So you have your 2 pieces of green fabric that you've pressed. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay the fold towards the center, so the finished side is going to be towards the center, raw edges out, and then we're going to lay the top piece, and you want to make sure that they overlap about 1 inch while still covering everything. Now I'm going to put green thread back in my machine. What it's going to do is finish this by doing a circle and tacking it down. But remember, when we're stitching, we don't want our presser foot to grab this. So they recommend that you take a piece of tape and lay it all the way across here. Now that's totally up to you. If you want to slow your machine down, that's great. If you just want to put about 1 inch of tape right here and here. But this is the last step, and you don't want to mess something up after you've spent all this time on it. So taping it is probably the best option. So I went ahead, overlapped the folds by 1 inch, I've taped it down, and now I'm going to do my last stitch out, which is going to tack all the pieces together. Okay, so I've stitched my last circle. Now I can remove my tape. This pulls away very easily. And I'm completely finished. I'm going to unhoop it, and now I want to trim about 1/4 inch all the way around the edge. This is a great time if you have pinking shears to cut around here, but if not, just go ahead and trim 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you the finished product. Okay, so I went ahead and I've turned it inside out, and my flaps overlap, which is awesome. And I'm going to take it to the ironing board and iron it, give it a good clean press. And I like to press from this side. If you're doing it on this side, make sure you use a pressing cloth so you don't fry the threads in the vinyl. One of the things you could do is you could stick a little card or let's say a gift card in here. And if you don't like having the opening, remember we have that wonderful 2-sided tape. You could just stick a piece of 2-sided tape in here and press it so that it's permanently closed. But anyways, there is our finished candle mat. If you don't own the Hoop Sister scissors, I love these because they're very easy to lay into your hoop because they've got a curve on them, and they have really nice sharp points that they're very easy to use when trimming around the gingerbread men. So anyways, that's our last project for 2020, and stay tuned. Everybody have a safe and holiday season, and we hope to see you back for our Embroidery Club in 2021. Thanks.